Hello, and welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. And if you're joining us live, we'd love to hear from you. Um, I'm Liz Hyman, I'm your host, and we are going to be talking about 2026. What are some of the things we need to start thinking about now to really have a great 2026? And so I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew. Today we've got Bryn Tillman and Renee Bigelow. And we may have others join us. We shall see. But we're going to do four quick topics today. So bear with us as we go from one topic to the next. But we're going to start the first podcast right now. Hello, and welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with your crew, Renee Bigelow and Bryn Tillman. And today we're going to get you started thinking about 2026 because we need 2026 to be a fabulous year. And how are we going to do that? Well, let's talk about some of the things that really matter. And I don't know about you guys, but here's what I'm hearing every day. Lead gen, lead gen, lead gen, lead gen. Liz, can you help us with lead gen? How are we going to do lead gen? The things we were doing in lead gen aren't working anymore. Nobody opens my emails. So how do we lead gen in this day and age right now in so much noise, in so much confusion? We had so much noise before, and now we have AI noise, which has, I don't know, quadrupled, 10 times, 100 times the noise, the amount of content, the amount of emails, the amount of everything. So what do we do? You guys,
I'm
the
happy to
world wants
start.
to know, how do we generate leads?
I mean, this is my baby, right? Like, if I can't answer this one, I should just go home. I am
Just
home.
go home.
Go
Just
home,
go home.
right? Okay. So we've got to humanize this so deeply, but also leverage technology. So there's a balance. So I just want to not talk about AI for a moment and let's just talk about relationships because we have to start thinking about filling our pipeline with relationships. This means we have to slow down our outreach to speed up our outcome.
Okay, so I need to reach out on LinkedIn and email to 1,000 people a week.
No, I mean, look, okay, I do that with email. I have a newsletter. My newsletter is the promotion of events, it's more like mass invites or listen to the podcast or, right? It's not personal. And people understand those newsletters are not personal. They're okay with that. On LinkedIn, even if you're making it as personal as possible, they're messing it up. So let me just give you a quick, I mean, I could go all day on this, but a quick example is this is where AI messes up, right? So Bryn, really enjoyed listening to you on the SOS podcast. It looks like you're doing some great things over at Social Sales Link, including this. I'm like, wow. And then it says, the reason I'm reaching out is because we have people like you do X, Y, and Z. And that's a bait and switch. That's about pretending to care. It's engineered empathy. It's not real. So if we want a successful 2026, we've got to rise above that. We've got to move from engineered empathy to real empathy. And this is going to, and I'm not saying don't use AI. I'm saying we've got to use it smarter, and we can use it like pre-top of the funnel. We can use it for nurturing. We can use it for brand awareness. But if we are going to talk about prospecting, we cannot rely on AI. Okay, number one. Number two, what do we rely on? Our existing relationships. So the theme for 2026 really needs to be focused on more referrals from people that love you. That's got to be the theme. If we want to rise above the noise, it's through a mutual connection, through a warm introduction. So what does this mean? Number one, we have to deepen our networking relationships and make them more purposeful. Liz and I are on a committee for women sales experts where Liz is running the engagement committee and I'm just having fun. I mean, even though I was the one that's supposed to be doing it, she took over. Thank you, Liz. Thank you, Liz. But what we're doing in engagement in 2026 is all about how are we creating referral partnerships? How are we learning more about what each of us do, who each of us serve? What are some of the triggers that we can listen to introduce people? But then we're taking it to the next level. The next level is we are helping them, and you can go do this, build a list on LinkedIn, and this is in the free, not in Sales Navigator, of your ICP, whether it's industry, title, location, whatever that looks like, is based
your
on
ICP, your ideal customer profile.
Your ideal customer profile. I'm an acronym geek, so thank you for those, for helping people interpret my brain. So find your ideal customer profile based on the filters LinkedIn allows and first degree connection. That creates a link at the top that you can share with anyone. And when they click through it, they see their first degree connections. So now Liz
Okay.
and
I. So hang on, Britton. Let me just make sure I understand this, because you have these amazing processes that you teach us. And I just want to make sure everybody's got it. So what you're going to do is if I want to do this with you, I'm going to go online, I'm going to go into LinkedIn, and I'm going to use LinkedIn to set up my ideal customer profile. And I'm going to set up filters that represent my ideal customer profile. And I'm going to say, get me on my second connections.
No, I love that. That's what we used to do.
Right.
So we used to do second degree connections and connections of Bryn Tillman, right? And then you would see a random 17 people out of the 350 I knew, right? And although that works, they're probably not the right ones, right? Necessarily. It's random. If I click first degree connections, and by the way, Liz knows this, she's just clarifying this for you, the listener, because we're doing this, but so you click first degree connection and all those filters, and I now see the 181 first degree connections that I know. Those filters are in the URL, in the website link. Those filters are represented. You'll see like percent signs and things in that. Those all will auto-populate the filters that you now requested. So I now take this link and I send it to Renee. And I say, Renee, here's a list of the people you know that I want to meet. She clicks on that, and she's not looking at my 181. She's looking at her 210. And so now we can get on a Zoom or meet for lunch or coffee and review this list when we're together. So Renee says, of these 210, here are the 19 people that I think you should meet. What event should I invite them to? What podcast should I push them to experience you? Because here's the thing, your prospects may not know that they need you right now. And so when we're introducing them, like explore working together, if there is not an immediate need, you're going to lose out on a lot of opportunities to engage. But if she copies us both in an email and then I respond and she's like, you've got to go to, next month on the third Friday, you've got to go check out her live on the SOS podcast, right? And so now, like, there's a way for them to experience me or you, right? And it's simple, it's low pressure. So the content is the experience that they're introduced to through a very high level credible partner.
So if you're listening or watching and you would like to have instructions for that, either email up, go on LinkedIn and connect with Bryn and say, Bryn, will you get those for me? Or go on LinkedIn and connect with me and say, Liz, will you get them for me? Yeah. And one of us will get those instructions to you so you can use them.
So I'm going to go to Liz, because she took what I did and put a really good process around it. So Liz has the better version of my, I guess I have your version I could send.
Probably. But anyway, either one of us, if you reach out, we'll share it. So I'm gonna kind of change gears here and Renee's our marketing guru here. Renee, what do we do? What do we do? How do we break through the noise?
Well, first of all, I'd like to back up just a hair and say one of the reasons that so many people are frustrated is they're right. A lot of the things that they used to do don't work. Now I'll explain why a lot of those things they used to do don't work.
Well, let me just start with, I get 10,000 emails a month.
Yeah. So
don't email me.
So one of those reasons is over reliance on single channel efforts, whatever that is, right? So if it was outbound emailing, like most companies that had over reliance on it, we were in a decade from like 2010 to 2020. Our decade was all about optimization, right? Everybody used their data. We became more data driven. And as we did that, we winnowed down to very, very thin strategies for building leads because we were optimizing on what was working more than we were growing new channels for the most part in most places. And now we've had a few years where that has kind of drifted. The market has drifted and businesses haven't. And that's why we're seeing these breaks. What were kind of cracks are now fault lines, essentially. So we see it in that instance of the outbound emailing, but you also see it in people who became super over reliant with like 90% of their leads coming from search, right? Organic search, same thing. You were at the mercy of an algorithm change with the helpful content update, and now with AI overviews and AI mode, and now there's a channel that is no longer what it was. You've over optimized for that channel. You got 90% of your leads from it. You didn't change with the channel. Guess what? Right? So that's the why this is happening, essentially. And it's happening throughout. Social media splintered. Emails are overloaded. So search changed. It's not one single channel, one single experience. It's multiple experiences across multiple channels. It's now discovery, not just search, right? So all of these things are happening. So what do you do? I've said, yes, you're right. This is why. So what do you do? I think one of the big things that people have forgotten is you need to go broader, right? And my golden rule is you need to be hitting 3 to 5 format. Over 8 to 10 frequency for pretty much anything. And almost to a fault, every single client that I encounter or prospect even that I talk to, they're not hitting those minimums, right, at all. So that's a really easy thing to start planning for. It is harder for some companies to add that because they're all in on one thing and they don't have the capacity. They think they don't have the capacity for the other, but you're all in on something that's not working. So you have to free up capacity to add that variety, right, and build up other channels. And I will say that another thing that we have to do, besides building up more muscle in other areas, is we have to start thinking, going back to some of the basics of marketing, and outside of these digital channels, we have to make sure that our brand is known, right? So you have to create demand in this world, not just capture it. We had a moment in time where things disrupted and went into single channels, whether it was Facebook about a decade ago and you know everyone was on Facebook and all of this demand was in Facebook and you just need to capture it. Or if it's on search, right? It was very easy to do PPC ads, right? All of that for the most part was capturing demand. Now we need to create it. So when you see all this splintering, some of the things that we need to go back to basics on are we doing press releases, media releases? Are we getting those out there so that we're telling our story outside of our own channels, right? And getting mentions from other people? Are we hitting that referral network and doing guest blog posts or cross blog posting or cross email campaigns, partnership marketing so that we get into other pools of people in a faster way with those newer channels to us? So you can do that one-to-one outreach for referrals, but you can also do some partnership marketing that's one-to-many, and that will help a lot. And it will increase the surface area and the distribution points where people can encounter your brand, right? So you have to think about all the places that you can get mentioned, not all the places that you are driving people to. I mean, yes, you still drive people to it, but The other thing that's changed, this is the third part of that, the other thing that's changed is people are coming to you much later. And that's one of the reasons the capturing demand isn't working the same way that it was, is if they are doing a massive amount of research on their own, they aren't just stopping at identifying their problem. They aren't stopping at identifying a list of solutions. They're going through and determining which solution is best and only reaching out when they can't go any further on their own. Right? So we have to make sure that there's enough material to educate them and move them along and meet them where they are, rather than try and pull them into our experience. Because 9 times out of 10, they want to be doing their own thing versus having to do ours. And if we pull them into something they're doing begrudgingly, we're not really starting off on the best foot with our customers. So I hope those are helpful. That's kind of breaking down where it is, why, and 3 or 4 things that we can do to address it.
Yeah, and I want to, you're both alluding to AI as we're talking about this, but we haven't confronted it. And I think there's a couple of things that are really important. I learned recently that Chromebooks, Bryn, are not going to come with Google anymore, right? They're just going to come with Gemini. You're not even going to be able to do. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I think there's 2 things. Gemini will be the new Google, but there's also a Gemini app. So it's not, I just want to because that can get confusing.
So Gemini is powering search.
Correct.
Right? Search has always had an algorithm. It's always been using AI, long before we had the terms AI, right?
But they are not. My understanding is if you get a Chromebook, when you
go to Google,
go to do a search, what you used to call Google search, is not going to look the same. Okay.
Well, search doesn't look the same now. There are multiple experiences within search.
I understand that. I'm pushing you a step further. The part we're used to is going away.
Yes. Right.
Yes. The sponsored ads aren't going to be there.
Correct.
So some of these things are fundamentally changing. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that our customers are learning to go to AI, to Chat GPT or Claude or whatever tool they're using, and doing their research there. And Renee has talked about this before. So if AI doesn't know you exist, if you are not interacting with the world in a way that AI is going to find or recommend you, then you may be missing the opportunity to be seen and to be heard. So as we're thinking about that strategy, we need to be thinking about how are we integrating AI, the way people are using AI, how are we integrating with that as we create our lead generation strategies. But there's still the old-fashioned things. Sometimes I think we kind of get lazy. We sit behind our desk and we say, I'm going to do all my lead gen sitting here. And that might work for some companies, but for a lot of companies, especially smaller companies, that's not going to work. Going out and meeting people, going to conferences, these things still work. They still work, and they work well because they're actually personal connections. And we can leverage those for lead gen. So any last thoughts on lead gen before we wrap up this episode?
I will say there are many ways AI can help you with lead gen and your prospecting.
Yes.
Too. There are lots of tools now that can, to Bryn's point, you don't want to fake empathy or engineer empathy with AI, but data is something that it's actually very good at. And you can put it to use with lookalikes, and you can use incredible filters and things that we couldn't do before. Areas where things were unstructured, for instance, there are a lot of tools that can help you across keywords that are on someone's website to help find. I have a client who's in a very niche industry, and it's very hard to find people who qualify for the way that they serve their products in the way that it fits their business model, right? It's very specific. And we can use an AI tool that finds the keywords in a prospect list to help identify whether they're the right or not, because it's not the whole industry, only specific people, right? And AI can help with a lot of that now. And it is a step change in being able to, you still kind of need to know what you're doing, and you need to understand the limitations and all of that. But there are much better prospecting tools that use AI now too as well.
Yes,
Brian, wrap us up here. What?
Yes, and I want to be careful that I don't upset anyone, but ZoomInfo is in a run for its money. So ZoomInfo is buyer mapping and who plays in what role and what's their email, and it's very expensive. And for $20 a month, you could even do it for free, right? We've been playing with this, and we all can go into ChatGPT and say, I'm looking for all this criteria. You can use SIC codes. You can use like all the things that you used to have to pay thousands or tens of thousands of dollars for lists are practically free. And Gemini now, and I'm playing more in Gemini because of what you started to say, Liz, and we should do a show on this because I have so much to say on it. But Gemini, the beautiful thing between Google and Gemini is indexing everything Google knows, right? Where you have ChatGPT that's out there in the world, but it doesn't have the deep knowledge that Google has about every website and every blog post, because it has absolutely indexed as much as possible in the world, which also limits the hallucinations, by the way. You're not going to get fake links. You're going to get real links. Doesn't mean the data is correct, because it's still the data that someone put in there. But the emails are amazing. They're as good as any buying a list I have ever seen. And they're putting them in tables, and you could say put them in an Excel spreadsheet. Like it's a Google spreadsheet you can download to Excel. Like what it's doing, to Renee's point in research, is absolutely incredible. The other thing is pre-call planning. Creating discovery questions. Hi, Chris. Creating discovery questions and create like all of these opportunities are incredible. The key is don't have it write for you completely. You can have it outline, give you ideas. And if you wanted to write, use your own transcripts from your client calls and say, pull out all my ideas, do not research. Use just this transcript. Okay.
All right. Well, let's wrap this up. I hopefully you have some good ideas about how you need to transform your lead generation for 2026 in this new, environment that we're selling in. And let's go in our next episode. Let's talk about, okay, now I've got the lead, kind of now what? How do I build momentum? So let's wrap this up, and then let's start our next episode. Thanks for joining us. All right, are you ready?
Sorry for being tardy.
No worries. No worries.
Timing was pretty good there, though, because we're ready for the next one.
We're ready for the next one, and you're going to be really good at this one, Chris. So, okay.
Is this the creating momentum?
Yeah. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Renee Bigelow. I should probably move me over here. Let's do that again.
From the top.
From the top. Thanks for sticking with us, everybody here who's with us live. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with your crew, Bryn Tillman, Renee Bigelow, and Chris Bowen. And we are talking about starting 2026 strong. What do we need to do to lean into a really successful year? In the last episode, if you didn't get a chance to listen to it, we were talking about prospecting. But in this episode, I really want to talk about momentum, because momentum is one of the hardest things in the sales environment right now, but it's also the most important. So when I say momentum, what I mean is when you say to me, they're ghosting me, what I'll say to you is you lost momentum. Something happened. You didn't keep them engaged. You didn't plan your next move with them. You didn't agree to the next action, whatever it was, but you lost momentum. And so now you've got to revive it. So rather than thinking about they're ghosting me, I need to think about I lost momentum. How do I get that momentum again? Because in sales, momentum is the most important part. If you keep that sale going, if you keep the conversation going with multiple people, if it's a complex sale, then you can keep building on it. Once you lose that momentum, you've got to start all over, and it's hard. It's really hard, again, because people are busy and they're distracted. And making buying decisions seems like it should be easier because we have so much information, but it's actually making it harder because we have so much information. So let's talk about momentum. What are some of your ideas, you guys, about once you get that conversation started, how do you keep it going? What are some things we can do to keep that momentum? And Chris, we haven't heard from you yet today.
Sure. So, I mean, I think you highlighted at least one of the items that I think is really, really important, and that is mutually agreeing on the next steps and understanding what that time frame is, when you're going to do it, who has to be involved. I think if you can do that once you get to a certain point throughout your entire cycle and map that out, that way you understand, sort of almost working backwards. Hey, if you need this done by this date, which I usually is either going to be tied to somebody's MBO or a regulatory requirement, a legal requirement, something along those things. Regulatory and legal, a lot harder dates than MBOs because you still have the process to go through. But being able to back up from that and agree on how we're going to
tell them what an MBO is.
Oh, sorry. Management by objectives, whatever it happened to be that you're bonused off of. So that leader may be bonused off of something in particular that has to happen this calendar year, this quarter, whenever, making sure that you understand those things so you can help them achieve their goals. You do that, you're going to be a lot more successful. But I think it's really getting into understanding that. And that requires a little bit of trust on their end. So if you don't have that relationship, you're probably not going to know what those things are. But once you build that relationship, they'll share those things with you. I've heard many, many times that, like, when people lose, I always think the lazy answer is it was price, or they ghosted me, or whatever. And I'm like, I'm not saying price wasn't a factor. Very well, usually is. But is it the main factor? Usually it's not. Usually it's that you weren't able to articulate your value well enough to help drive it forward. Well, that happens earlier in the sales cycle too, not just at the end.
Yes, Bryn. Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. So we leverage our framework called CHIRP. Okay. Only because I love my acronyms, right? But we'll go through CHIRP. CHIRP is how we run a first call so that we know how to keep the momentum going. In our experience, if you don't get what I'm about to talk about in the first call, it's very hard to keep them engaged. So CHIRP is, what is the challenge they're going through? This is easy. Most of us know to ask this, right? What's going on? Please don't lean back with a yellow pad and a pencil and say, so what's keeping you up at night, right? You need to bring in, here are some of the things that we're seeing. Are you seeing some of these things? What's going on in your environment? Get them comfortable. And the way you get them to be a little vulnerable and sharing is by letting them know they're not alone and you're seeing this everywhere. Because once you say you're seeing it everywhere, they're much more comfortable to talk about it because they don't feel as exposed if you already know that it's happening, right? So that's challenge. H is history. This is something not enough sales reps do. But what have you already tried to fix this that has failed? What have you done? The answer could be nothing, but it could be we hired this company last year and it didn't work out. I get that a lot. We hired a sales training company to teach us LinkedIn. Sales training was great, but their LinkedIn was terrible and nobody's doing it, right? I get that. What is the history? What have they gone through to try to fix the challenge that obviously didn't work because they still have the challenge, right? how is it impacting their business today? What is going on right now because this challenge hasn't been fixed? R, what is the risk of doing nothing? Not what is the risk of picking me or someone else. That is almost never the question.
And Bryn, I want to jump in for just 1 second because of AI, because people can ask all these questions, they're asking about the risks of doing what they're thinking about doing, of buying a certain product, of implementing it wrong, of leaving, using this vendor over that vendor. But which makes it even more important that you're talking to them about what is the risk of not moving forward, because they get paralysis, right? They can't decide because there's so much to worry about, and they forget that there's a risk in not taking action as well as in taking action.
And I only want to talk about, in my mind, it's me or nothing. If they're shopping other people and that happens, that I can't control that. But what I can control is positioning in a way that if you do nothing, I have fodder to use in engaging and coming back, right? I have real empathy about no decision. No decision is usually way worse than going with my competitor, to be honest. I mean, there are some competitors that might be worse, but generally, no decision means nothing is fixed, and whatever's impacting your business is going to amplify over time, right? So chirp ends with P, and this is the next one that most people miss. How is this a priority? Where is this the priority in your business? Because it could be a huge challenge. They could have done nothing to fix this or spent money to fix it. It could be impacting their business. Maybe they say it's impacting our business by $10 million a year. That sounds like a lot to me. The risk of moving forward is this year it'll impact another 10 million. That sounds like a priority to me, or important. So, and then I go priority, and they're like, well, we have 7 other things that we have to fix that add up to $1 billion in business. So even though this sounds like a lot, this is not our priority right now. And so those are the questions that if we can get early on in that first conversation, and we make sure we've scheduled the next step with a defined next step about what that's going to look like. And by the way, I'm going to throw in part of that is before you show up at that first call, you need to buyer map that whole organization. Who are the 6 or 7 people that are going to be involved? So when you go to that next step and say, okay, so, thanks, Chris, for your time. Here are the next steps, A, B, and C. Let's get the next time on our calendar where we can kind of review where we are. Maybe it's the timeline that you identified, whatever that looks like. Now, typically, Chris, at this point, we bring on these roles. It looks like Liz and Renee and Fred and Anne, because I know that because I use LinkedIn, are people that we should loop in pretty early. Do you have access to their calendars? And in that moment, they're like, oh, so our next call is not just with the 2 of us. Now, does it work 100% of the time? No, of course not. But it works like 30 to 40% of the time, which is pretty darn good. I made up that stat, by the way. I totally made up.
I love it when you make up stats. All right, let me jump in for a second, and then I want to get to Renee, but I want to talk about priority for a second. We tend to think that an organization has a set of priorities, and everybody in the organization then sees the priorities the same way. And what I will say is if you have 5 buyers at different buying levels with different sets of problems that they're solving, that priority in their mind will differ. The value that they see in it will differ. Does it, if I'm the user and it impacts my day to day and I'm I'm miserable, it's my number one priority. However, if I'm the CEO and I have 6 other problems that are costing me a ton of money and say, yeah, so this group of people's a little irritated, they can deal with it for 6 months. My priority looks really different. So when we start talking about even the history, the CEO is like, yeah, we tried this. We didn't spend very much money on it. We really should have done something more intensive. We're ready to go. And somebody else is like, I used my entire budget on that, right? So every single person that you talk to, when you go through that chirp, you may get a whole bunch of different answers. And you then have to put that puzzle together to understand what is the priority, what is the history, how is this going to flow, and what are the next steps. I just wanted to throw that in really quickly. Renee, come on and talk to us about momentum, because this is one of the things that Renee taught me in sort of a larger way. Like, I always knew this, but Renee talks about this flywheel, and she's really the one that got me thinking about the importance of momentum and the idea that once you have momentum, you've got to keep leveraging that momentum to keep going and to sell the next thing and to get new relationships. So Renee, talk to us about momentum.
Yeah. So I'll just say in general, what you're talking about, Liz, the thing that you kind of lit up at, just because people might be wondering, Liz knows a lot about this. So if something kind of was a light bulb for her, what was it? And it's essentially that the more we talk about a funnel, the less that we are talking about bringing back that energy that we brought into an organization. So if you think of it more in a flywheel, you're activating that energy to drive more back in, right? So for instance, if you get a good customer, are you activating your customers? Are you making them part of a community? Are they talking to other people where they could be referring you? Are they talking about your brand in public? What are you doing that activates them? Are they championing you across their organization so you can get more usage up if there's more headroom for that account, right? All of those things are activating that energy and not letting it drip through a funnel and end. So if you think of it in that way, like, how do we activate it and get it to get that energy that we've put into that original sale to help drive the next sale, right? So that's essentially what we're talking about with that momentum. But the other thing that Liz, I think, enjoys, that how I base a flywheel is all based off of the experience, right? Every bit of it. Your entire brand is based off of the experience that people have with it. And sorry, that is my kid calling. Sorry. Do not disturb. So your brand is based off of the interactions that people have with it and how they come away from it. So whatever those experiences are, and it's not just customers, it is customers, employees, the product. Like, you could love the people that work there, but if the product sucks, you're not going to have a good experience, right? And it's the community, the community around it, and that's that part you have to activate back in. Now, in a sale, not losing the momentum, that transfers over as well. I'm bringing it back. That transfers over as well. Is during that sale, your prospect is having an experience with your brand. And it is one of the first high impact experiences they're having. They've had experiences possibly in a community. They've had experiences one-on-one in a trade show or in consuming content. All of those count. This is one of the first times they're probably having interaction with representatives from your company related to their business, right? And if that experience is not what they want when they picture doing business with you long term, they are the people who are ghosting you. This is not showing up in numbers, and it drives me crazy because I see it all the time. I see it in the clients that I work with where we improve the experience, but I also see it with my clients when they walk away from deals left and right. And I just wrote about one of these because it's so endemic. It's everywhere. And these don't show up in data. They don't show up as gone to competitor, although that's probably what somebody else coded it because they did actually go find another solution. They don't show up as pricing problem. They don't, or if they do, it's wrong, right? The reason they're leaving is they're having a bad experience. So if you keep that experience good, this is where sales can shine. If you're that trusted advisor, right? If you are just having a decent human relationship and being the advisor, making sure that you know what they expect out of the sales process versus shoving them into your sales process. The one I just wrote about, sadly enough, was a sales organization, was a CRM organization that I had spoken with my client for almost a year with. Sorry, don't know how they just got through again. That I had talked almost a year with my client and gotten him ready for, and he was done, sold, right? But he still hadn't seen the product and how he would use it. He'd only seen me kind of show him around in a version I had. So he goes through the demo, he goes through the sales process to get the demo. Took him 4 calls to see a demo. 4 hours of a business owner / CEO's time to see the demo. Didn't get the pricing till the 5th call. Then after the 5th call, they start putting the hard press on him within 2 days. The same week he's leaving for vacation over Thanksgiving. With his, really, over a family holiday, you're going to do this? And he says, I'm going on vacation. And the sales rep says back to him, you told me that you were ready to make a decision. I went to bat for this pricing with you. It's only good for 2 more days. You know what he said? He said, I know you like this solution, but I'm done. If this is what it's like to do business with them, I don't know how they're getting through, y'all. I apologize.
I think your child take it.
Yeah,
My
well,
husband is dealing with them. Anyway, if they are seeing this as the first experience that they have, they are not going to spend money to get more, right? If it didn't match, it's going to kill your momentum. And to your point, Liz, if you have to start all the way back over, now you're starting over with a horrible aftertaste in their mouth that you have to overcome as well. But nobody tells you, I don't like the way you're selling to me. I don't like this. I just, they're not going to try to change it. They're just going to walk. So a lot of this ghosted problem, it's the experience.
so thanks. That totally got me going in about 6 different directions. So I at this moment, I'm wishing we had Julie Hansen here with us, because Julie was just talking the other day about how we kill sales in this medium, right? So I'm on virtual calls with my clients, and we still have salespeople that don't know how to do it. We are it's been over 10 years, 12 years that we've been doing virtual calls for sales calls, and it's been 5 years since COVID, guys. Since it started. If you don't know how to do this yet, figure it out. It's not acceptable to show up poorly on a Zoom call anymore. And you are that experience when you are not fully there, when you are not looking at the camera, when your lighting is horrible, when you don't know how to do the push the different buttons, whatever it is, you look bad. You look dumb. And people don't trust.
Screen and do a demo of what you're trying to show.
Right. Yeah. So, I think there's other things about how we show up. We talk about trust, right? People don't trust salespeople. They don't trust salespeople. You have to start your relationship with the understanding that every single person in the room, including every single person in this room, has been screwed, forgive my French, by a salesperson. We have all had bad experiences. And because we have all had bad experiences, even though I know sales is a profession and good professional salespeople take care of their clients, I also know that I might be up against somebody who is not trustworthy. So the very first thing you need to do is build trust. Shut up and listen. Have empathy. Acknowledge what they say before you start talking. No yabba dabba do. Shut up and listen. Be authoritative, but be respectful, right? Know your stuff.
And do what you say you're going to do.
Do what you say you're going to do. You want momentum? Do what you say you're going to do. Renee, what were we going to say?
Know your product.
Know your product.
Hey, know your customer's product. Like, if you're going to impact that customer, understand their business. Who are their buyers? How are you helping them? Because if you can't get over that hurdle, why should they go with you? I'm gonna guess that they shouldn't.
And I have one more pet peeve. I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, but I have one more pet peeve, and that is salespeople who try to use really big words so they sound smart. And I'm going to tell you again, if you're using really big words and you don't know how to use them properly, you sound dumb.
Yep.
I've been watching Judge Judy. You can tell you sound dumb, right?
Liz, can we I would love if the three of you could add in something on this experience thing, because it's such a thing. And I know all of you have said in our other podcasts how you shouldn't kill a deal by trying to force a close. And this is a big part of the experience. And I think when we're talking about momentum, I think this is a big piece of it. And I know each of you has some perspective to add on to that. And I think our audience would benefit in hearing it, because there are people that are pushing their sales reps to close. They're pushing them to close by the end of month or end of quarter or end of year. I don't understand. You've been talking to this person for how long and they aren't ready to make a decision? They aren't in the room. They don't know all the things that the salesperson did. So I would love if the three of you could give a quick tip about that pushy close.
Let me give you a story, which is one of my favorites. It's actually a story that is a true story, and it was my brother who experienced. So my brother was selling super high-end security solutions for enterprise, federal government, like big multi-million-dollar deals. And he had this young, cocky sales manager that came in, and he said, Ted had spent months and months getting this to the point where it was. They had come to agreement on a price. They had an agreement on when the deal was going to close, and this sales manager wanted it to close sooner. So he went around my brother's back to the client and said, hey, if you buy it this week, we'll give you a discount. So lost Ted's credibility with the client. The client then said, Ted told me I had the best price that I was going to get on this, and you just told me there's a better price. We now have to start this process over. So not only did they not close the deal sooner, they lost money on it, and they lengthened the sales cycle. So that's my favorite. Like, what could go wrong?
Yeah. It killed momentum, didn't create it.
Killed momentum. You have to understand your buyer has a timeline. You can try to incent them, but they're going to buy it when they're going to buy it because of the reasons they're buying it. And
it goes back to Bryn's chirp. What's the priority? How does it match up with their priorities?
Did either of you, Chris or Bryn, want to give a story? Or
I mean, I can tell you that I frequently say that customers buy for their own reasons on their own timeline. And the only thing you can do is understand what's the problem they're going to solve. How is that amplified or not through this process? And if it's one of those things that's going to get astronomically worse if they don't fix it, you can highlight that, but they're going to buy when they're ready, when it's their priority. I don't think you can manufacture urgency. You can only illuminate what they care about already. If you try to force it on them, it's going to be just like anything else. If somebody forces, if you go into the mall and you've got that person at the kiosk that's coming up to you, most of the time you're trying to dodge that person. Actually, I'd say 99.9% of the time you're trying to dodge that person. The time you can't is when you accidentally almost ran into them because they jumped in front of you.
Perfume people. I'm always running from the perfume people.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like, you have to be able to understand their problem, how it fits into their organization, what problem it solves, and how motivated are they to solve that particular problem now or whenever. And then you can highlight those things. But otherwise, I don't believe in manufacturing urgency. I think that's where you end up with buyer's remorse, or they'll agree to do something and then they're going to think about it over the weekend. And then you're going to have somebody who's like, oh, this is moving at a pace that we're not ready for. And you're going to really slow it down. At that
it goes to.
Yeah.
So I have one line. Detach from what the prospect is worth to you and attach to what you are worth to the prospect.
Yep.
Okay, so one more thought on this, and then let's wrap up. One of the other problems that we have, and Renee talked about this before in our last talk, was about multi-channel. We tend to think that once we get that person in our funnel, We'll just email them. I'll just email them. And what I'm doing funnel reviews in the sales reps. Oh yeah, I got to send them an email. Oh yeah, I got to send them a follow-up email. And I sit there thinking and often saying, pick up the phone. Oh, I don't have their number. How could you have sent a proposal to someone whose number you don't have? Right? If you're in a sales process, get their phone number. If they're not willing to give you a phone number, they're not serious. Stop wasting time with them. Right? But there's other ways. Send a card. Send a card thanking them for their time. Send a video. I don't know. Send a LinkedIn note. Send them an article. Send them an invite on LinkedIn to do something with you. Stop relying on, I sent an email, that should be momentum, but they're not answering it. I'm not surprised they're not answering it.
If you go back to that, what I talked about in the last podcast, which is worth hearing and it's quick, is that 3 to 5 formats, 3 to 5 channels or formats that you should be reaching out across over 8 to 10 frequency. A lot of people use that to get into a conversation and forget to use it to get to the close. And then forget, again, if we're talking about activating, to keep a customer and to get them activated and wanting to help grow your business, be invested in the community to help grow your brand and your business. If you continue to do that through the sale, then you can do things that make them feel like it's around them. You know how when you drive around and you see a whole bunch of white cars, you feel like, oh my gosh, there are white cars everywhere now because you're thinking of a white car, right? So this is already on their mind. You make sure there are things that they can run into, right? That affirm what you're trying to position towards them. So you can share a post on LinkedIn if they are a connection and hope that they see it, especially if you're selling to 10 people at once and you're talking about a challenge and a way to overcome it. You can then use a LinkedIn post that's not even like direct to them, right? You can, to your point, you could send something that is an article to them, and you could mail that article, tear it out of a magazine and send it to them in the mail, right? Like, so that everywhere they turn, they're getting something that reinforces where their head is right now, because it keeps, as Chris said, it helps with that urgency in their own timeline. It helps them remember the next step, to keep it present, right?
Okay, Bryn, bring it home.
Okay, so I'm going to go back to Chirp. If you've done Chirp well, you have everything you need to move it forward, because you know their priority, you know their challenge, you know the risk of not changing. So we need to use their words back at them, right? So when we spoke, you said that this was a huge priority, and if this was not resolved by March or April of 2026, that you're going to have to lay off people, that you're going to have to close a facility, right? What was that? Bring it back to their words. Like, my goal is to make sure that risk doesn't happen. And I know that you have a lot on your plate, but when we spoke, this really stood out as a significant priority for you in moving forward with your business. If those priorities have changed, please let me know. If they haven't, I think it's really important that we have the next conversation.
Well, thank you for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. And we'll see you in the next episode. Okay, we're going to do quickly the next two. We were going to do those short, but we always get so excited and have so much to say.
Sorry about the kids calling y'all. I got a brand new iPhone and they moved the silent button. I was sitting here struggling how to make it silent.
Oh, that's so funny.
It just shows how important you are, Renee.
To them, how dare they have to wait 5 more minutes?
Well, if they're calling 3 times, my kids don't call.
No. It was one calling and then the other calling, because God forbid they talk to each other at the same pickup.
Got it.
Okay, you guys ready?
Yes.
All right. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm your host, Liz Hyman, and I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Renee Bigelow, Bryn Tillman and Chris Bowen. And today we are talking about 2026. How do we get started in 2026 successfully? And the last couple of episodes that we've done have been about prospecting and about keeping momentum. And now we're going to talk about keeping the customers that we have and growing the customers that we have. Really briefly, we're going to talk about this, but there's no point getting new customers if you're not keeping the ones you have, right? That is the least expensive, most important thing you can do is keep the customers you have, keep them happy, keep them growing, solving their problems. So what can we do to actually win that repeat business and earn their loyalty? Like how do we do this? Because when I hear companies telling me, especially SaaS companies telling me they've got 30% churn, like, are you kidding me? How can you afford that? That's like having a pen full of sheep and going to the market to go get more sheep and leaving the gate open. We just don't do that. Sorry, I grew up spending my summers on a farm. But we don't do that. So what are some things? What are some easy strategies for keeping our existing customers engaged and happy? And before I pass it to the team, let me just say this. If you did not go through the sales process properly and you had a complex business-to-business sale and you forgot to check in with the user buyers about what they wanted and what they needed and how they use it, and now they're not engaged because they don't like it and they're not using it and no one ever explained it to them, you're losing this, not because the customer success team didn't do their job. You're losing because you didn't do your job, because the salesperson didn't do their job, because the sales organization didn't make sure that they were selling to a client they could keep happy. It's too expensive. It's a waste of money to sell to a customer who's not going to be happy. So, okay, you guys, now we have customers who should be happy. We eliminated that problem. How do we keep them happy? Bryn, are you ready to start?
So the first thing is stop handing it off completely to a customer success person. Like there's this that went from an SDR to the account executive to customer success, and there's no continuity in relationships, right?
Okay, wait, stop. Do you guys all hate that as much as I do?
Renee, you might be.
Yeah, I will just say again, a CRM company, right? They're supposed to know sales really well. They're supposed to know customer success really well. One of my biggest pain points is every year when there's a contract negotiation, this AE flies in. It's often changed since the last time. They have no idea about my account, right? And they start trying to like negotiate the contract and what's different or whatever off of some scorecard that they're seeing on my account. Whereas the person that I deal with on a regular basis, my account manager, can't contribute to the sale. Sorry. Soapbox.
No, I mean, but this is an epidemic. Let's be really clear. This is not a standalone issue. This is sales enablement got up there and said, okay, we're going to silo those things so that the SDRs are solely focused on, one thing and that they can do that exceptionally well. And the account manager is focused on one thing, and then client success. So and that is not at any way, shape, or form beneficial to the buyer. That is about what the selling company thinks is in the best interest of most top productivity. And so that's where it breaks down. So I have clients that are too big for me to change that. But because I'm working with one department of one sales team, I'm like, these are your relationships, guys. You can hand it over to customer success, but you need to say to them, if anything happens or doesn't happen that should have, I am still here for you. If you need an internal advocate because you're not getting what you need, I'm still here for you. And in fact, what I'd like to do is set up a reoccurring 15-minute meeting every single month with you, where we can go through, are you getting what you need? Is adoption happening? And then I can fight internally to make sure that you're getting everything you need. And so what's happening now, and I've worked with this company for a lot of years, for quite a few years, and it's only a small group. Like, I need to expand, but it's a small group that we're sharing great success in. But here's what we're seeing. There was a little bit of need in the beginning. There's not a lot of need, but they're still enjoying their 15 minutes. But what happens is renewals are no problem, no issue. We're just renewing because I'm still getting that 15 minutes a month. I feel taken care of. I have a customer success person who's helping me, but my original account executive, who really is responsible at the highest level, is showing up for me every single month, 15 minutes. Here are the other things that came from this that are seller focused, not buyer focused. It's so much easier to get referrals from those clients. Like, your business is going to expand exponentially because of that deep relationship. If you hand that off and in 6 months you want a referral, they don't remember your name. So there's some selfishness in this. I don't want this to be about selfishness, but when the team lead says that's not the best use of their time, what could be better than a scheduled meeting with a client that you are continuing to build a deep relationship with, that, by the way, if they leave, will take you wherever they go. If they leave, will absolutely make sure that, especially if it's on their own terms, that you have deeper relationships with other folks inside the organization. And I'm just going to share one quick, because I'm on this client, one quick success story. One of the things one of the reps did, because they wanted more content and marketing wasn't helping at all, is they started interviewing their clients, not about their product or service, just interviewing their clients and highlighting and spotlighting. And then what they did is they socially surround all the other players inside of the organization with the 7-minute spotlight video. And so they went to the CEO and said, hey, really love working with this person, interviewed them, great interview, check this out. They went to, so socially surrounded. So when, in this one case, when their one client left, by the way, they were brought in immediately to the new company, but they had a foothold inside this organization. So when a new person came in who wanted to bring in their company, the rest of the organization said, no, we have a deep relationship with the rep. Okay, I'm done ranting.
Okay, Chris.
I think one of the things that you should do and do fairly early, especially for larger accounts, is schedule your QBRs and get QBRs going, and not make it to where you're just saying, oh, here's what we did within your account. Make it joint. What is it that they need? What is it that you're providing? Where are the gaps? What are some topics that you can bring to that leadership team that they're not currently leveraging, whether it's feature function or whether it's other problems that you're seeing in the industry? But make sure you're building those relationships. And if you do that on a really, really obviously quarterly basis, then at least you're able to have that consistent checkpoint and make sure that they're getting what they need. Not because those things can change relatively quickly. And if you're not on top of it and you don't have those relationships, then you're going to get supplanted. Or they're going to look at another solution that may be features and functions or things that you could do, but you're not going to get that chance because maybe they don't know about that because it's not something they're using today. And you're going to miss out on those opportunities. But it's really maintaining those relationships and then building that relationship across the organization from the people that not only use your product but are impacted by it. So you can understand when things are going bad, you can get ahead of it. If you're waiting until they raise a red flag, you've got a lot of work to do at that point because it's taken a long time for them to get there.
So I want to add to what Chris just said. What's really important is that sales is not a bad word, remember. So our sales teams, our sellers, our customer success reps, their jobs are to solve problems. So when I talk to new companies that I'm working with and I say to them, well, what other opportunities are there in this account? And have you talked to anybody? And their response is, well, we don't want to push. We don't want to be salesy. we don't want to undermine the relationship by, getting out of our lane. And my reaction is this. It's very simple. If they have a problem that you can solve and you are not solving it for them, someone else will. And when that someone else from another company, probably your competitor, solves that problem for them, they've probably done it at a strategic level. So as you work with a company, you get moved down to this operational level and you start talking to the people that you know well and that you interact with every day. And you stop talking to the strategic players that brought you in the first place. So now your competitor is solving a problem you had every opportunity to solve, but you didn't get proactive and figure out that they had the problem. Some new sales rep comes in from another company, positions themselves strategically. And then everybody starts going, well, where's our current vendor? Why weren't they there helping us solve this problem? And suddenly you are unseated because you didn't do what your customer needed them to do, which was help them solve problems. So when your customers are saying things to you like stay in your own lane, it's because they don't know what you do. And because you are operationally reacting to their needs and you are not strategically working with them to solve their problems. So if you want those relationships to grow, particularly those strategic or those that have a huge opportunity for growth, you cannot be reactive. You've got to be strategic and you've got to partner and you've got to be proactive. And that's how they grow. Renee, did you have something you wanted to add?
Yeah. So I'm going to go back to that. The flywheel and the momentum, right? It doesn't stop with the sale. It doesn't stop when you get somebody into a sales process, and it doesn't stop when they come back. You have to start marketing to your customers again, but you market to them as customers, not prospects, right? So marketing never goes away throughout all this. So that needs to be part of it. Secondly, I love what Chris and Bren said, and Chris and Brent, I 100% do the same thing with my clients. If it's split, many companies, the sales rep still does account management. There's a lot of that out there. But when it is split, making sure that they're together at least for the QBRs, so that the relationship is across both. But I also think it needs to go deeper than just those two. And I'm going to tell you why. One is 30 to 40% of most of my customers turnover in the last 5 years or so. They all tell me when I do an initial intake with them, one of our top problems is our buyer. We have 30 to 40% attrition rate across the board with the people who buy our products. The reason is people aren't staying as long in jobs, right? Guess what that also means? And this is where the sales staff doesn't always recognize. Your sales staff is also turning over pretty regularly. So your customers need to have a relationship with people that aren't just your salesperson. There is a lot of push for it to be the salesperson that controls the relationship. And I believe that's true through a sales process while they're steering. But once they become a customer, you got to go deep. You got to have a deep bench because you have high risk if that person leaves and the reciprocity for that relationship walks out the door with that rep, right?
Yeah. So Renee, what you're saying is your sales rep doesn't own the relationship, doesn't control the relationship. Right. They quarterback it.
Right.
They quarterback that relationship and they toss the ball off to the person who needs to be having the conversation.
And the quarterback doesn't play solo out on the field, right?
Nope. Never saw one successfully do that.
If you are an important enough customer, the CEO needs to know your CEO's name, right? They need to at least have interacted. Your direct buyer needs to know the CEO for the sales rep, the product we're selling from. They need to know the CEO finds them important. They need to get a message from the CEO from time to time. We need to make that happen. And then the third thing, so there's continuing to market to them. There's making sure you grow the bench for both sides of the bench, right? And then you need to make sure that your customers identify as customers of your brand. It needs to feel like they are part of a tribe of like-minded people. They need to meet other people that feel the same way. So whatever you can do that starts, one of the best ways to crank your flywheel and get more business out of your customers is when they identify as, I am a customer of X. This is what I do. This is how I do this process. This is how I purchase. And then they meet other people who are like-minded. If you can start that turn of the flywheel where you start putting your clients in situations together, like these do not have to be high lift. One of the top things I often do is in office hours for my clients, where instead of a webinar where we're the only ones that can speak, it's just a Zoom type meeting and everybody can speak. And they're often very small, but customers start talking to each other more than we talk, right? And that makes them identify as being part of a tribe. And when they feel part of a tribe, then it's part of their identity. When it's part of their identity, they do more, right? So that's like a very heavily underutilized tactic, is getting the first turn of turning your customers into a community. You don't have to be a consumer brand to do that. As a matter of fact, you often have a lot more success in doing it more easily as a B2B brand.
Okay. Thanks, Renee. That was exactly right on. Any other last thoughts before we wrap up this conversation about how to grow your existing accounts?
The last thing I would say, Liz, is it was something that you had said that sparked this, but it was if your customer has a problem that you can solve, it is malfeasance for you to not help solve that problem. You should not view as you have this great relationship if you're not in there and understand, hey, we've got things that can solve these other problems for you, and they understand that. If you're letting your competition come into a place where you've got a foothold, all because you're scared of being salesy or pushy or anything like that, you're not being pushy. You're solving a problem that they have. They're going to buy or not buy based on whether that view is accurate, right? So I think that's one of the things that I've said so many times. I probably should have it tattooed or something. So probably.
And you can't do that if you don't have relationships across the organization.
I have one more tactical thing to add, Liz. And that is, make sure you know what's going on at your customers. Sign up for their newsletters. Set a Google alert for your customer companies, right? Make it go to a folder in your inbox. And before you call them, take a look and see what's happening in that folder so that you know what's going on. Bryn probably has a million tips for how you can follow any personnel changes on LinkedIn, right? But know what's happening with the players, know what's happening with the company. If they had a big oopsie and they're in the news for a bad reason, you don't want to go into your meetings and not know about that. If they have a big new office being built or new division rolling out, like to Chris's point, you should know. So set up some tools that are very simple, subscribing to their newsletter, following everybody you need to follow on LinkedIn, set up a Google alert, whatever tools, those are all free, by the way, but whatever tools you have available to keep track of what's going on. And to Chris's point with the QBRs, at minimum, before the QBR every time, review that.
Well, thanks to the Sales SOS crew. Thanks to all of you for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast. Okay, let's do a real quick final episode here. Welcome to the Sales SOS podcast. I'm Liz Hyman, your host, and I am here with your Sales SOS podcast crew, Chris Bowen, Renee Bigelow, and Bryn Tillman. And we are talking in these last couple of episodes about how do you go into 2026 with momentum, with strength, with a plan. We want to enter 2026 feeling good about what we can accomplish. So we've talked a little bit about prospecting. We've talked about momentum. We've talked about growing our existing accounts. But I think in order to do all three of those things, we need to start the year with sales and marketing in step together, right? We need to be working together, not, oh, marketing does the top of the funnel and then they aren't allowed to touch anything ever again. And, they keep sending me prospects that aren't the ones I want, and sales never follows up on it. Like, gosh, could we not have these conversations anymore? So how do we get sales and marketing working together, pulling together for the same goal. Renee, you want to start this?
Yeah, I'll start just as the marketer here. I'll start with a couple of things. One, you need to be in the same meetings. Like marketing should have a marketing meeting, sales should have a sales meeting, but there should at least be one meeting per week where there's a representative from both, if not everybody in both, because that's the only way that you can keep up with. Marketing needs to know the temperature of the marketplace, what's going on, what salespeople are hearing, what their pressures are, what objections are happening, all of those things. They need to know the sales promotions that are going through. Is there a fire sale? Is there a rebate opportunity? Is there what, like, marketing needs to know all of those things. And sales needs to know what marketing's working on, because one of the top complaints that salespeople have is that it's all like, some mystery box happening and they don't see it before customers see it, before it's public. And for instance, I just had a customer where I said, look, we're about to announce something. We went to the geographic expansion. We went to the rep that's going to be touching that area that has some customers already in that area. And we said, we're going to hold off on the public announcement for several days so you can call them first, so that they feel like the insider, right? Like, that's how you work these things together, where, you're sharing this information back and forth. So that's a big one, is just making sure that you're all in the same meetings helps a lot. And I have more, but I'll just go with one point at a time right now.
Bryn, you've got a thought?
I have one thought on this, and then I think Renee is really the person that is the expert around this. But what I'm doing to bridge the salespeople and marketing, because I talk to marketing, I ask their opinions on things, but I don't really deeply work with marketing. But the one thing I insist on is that marketing now grab the Copilot transcripts, the Teams transcripts from and into Copilot, and say, you need to understand exactly the conversations that the sellers are having with the buyers. You have to hear it, because they are different than they were last month, last year, 5 years ago, 10 years ago. And so my insistence, if I'm going to work for LinkedIn training, is that that marketing is using the transcripts from the sales calls to create the content that the salespeople need.
Can I just say about LinkedIn while Bryn is sitting here? If your marketing people are running your social media for the company, and you as the salespeople or sales leaders or company leaders are not sharing that content and commenting on that content, you're wasting everybody's time and you're not leveraging what you should be leveraging. So, like, don't leave marketing hanging by having them do all this work and then you don't even, interact with it. Chris, do you have something?
Yeah, as always, so I think the first thing is understanding that we're both sides of that are trying to get to the same goal. We have different roles to play, but we're ultimately trying to accomplish the same thing: generate customers, make them happy, make them love our product, and have them be raving fans. That's what we would all want. I think the one thing that I think does not always happen enough is making sure that you have a feedback loop between both sides. If something's not working, marketing can't fix something if they're not aware of it. Sales is not going to fix something if they're not aware of it. But if you're not having that consistent communication between the two sides, with hopefully the defensive barriers down, then you're not having those real conversations that are going to help propel you forward. Like, you have to have some level of understanding of, we're trying to get there. We each have a different role to play in order to help the entire company get there, and making sure that that's how you're moving forward. That's the easy part of it.
So I want to talk about two things. One is I want to talk about compensation. Let's start there. We compensate marketing one way and we compensate sales in a different way. And we wonder why the two react differently to the same inputs. Well, if I'm only being compensated on what I close, then all I'm going to focus on is what is closable. It's just logical. And if I'm marketing and I'm being paid a salary, but I've got KPIs that tell me I've got to get conversions, and that's, I need to get a certain number of people to the website, I've got to get a certain number of conversions to leads, whatever that is, then I'm going to focus on those things. Somehow you have to build a compensation and KPI strategy, key performance indicators, KPI strategy, that brings your team together. If marketing does a ton of work and they bring in a whole bunch of leads that are not closable because they're not our ideal customer, everyone is wasting their time. If sales cannot close a good deal, then we're all wasting our time. So we need to work together to make sure that we get the leads in the top of the funnel and we have momentum carried through to close those deals. And if the team aren't compensated such that they're both responsible, then they're not going to be responsible and they're not going to work together. So however you do that, it doesn't matter. Just make sure that everybody understands everyone in the company is responsible for closed deals, because we all impact that. Everyone who is customer facing and even those who are not impact whether deals close or not, and particularly the second deal. But again, if there are no leads coming in, then sales can't close anything. Sales has to be part of lead gen. It's important. Okay, so that's the first thing. I think the second thing is that you have to build trust between sales and marketing, right? We have to be talking about the same things in the same way. And what I often see is marketing will come up with a plan, and they will come up with language, and they'll come up with all of these things. And I'll look at it and I'll go, that's really interesting, but that's not stuff sales can use. It's not written in a way that sales can use it. We need to bring these two teams together and come up with a real understanding about how our customer buys, the language that they use, and the way that they go through their journey and how we interact with them along the journey. So a perfect example of that is I'll have a marketing team that's really focused on the person that usually comes to the website. We're going to create a website and content around the person, the buyer, and I've heard it called the ideal buyer, which there may be, but in a complex business-to-business selling environment, there is no ideal buyer. There are a bunch of buyers, right? So they'll create the website and all of the content for this one person who's typically the person, the title that comes to the website. But they're not thinking about all of the other people and all of the other language. It's not an account-based approach. So when I go into a team, we start with, let's talk about who are all of the buyers who are involved in this. What is the problem each one of those is facing? What's their relationship to the problem? And what language are they using to talk about it? Guess what? The CEO is using different language than the tech. They're talking about it differently. And if your language only talks to that tech who gets sent out to do the research, you're not supporting the sales team in the conversations they need to have. So we need to understand this entire thing so that we can bring these two teams together successfully. Renee, you've got something to add to that. I saw that.
Yeah. So here are a couple of things that I think I like to make sure that we always include something tangible and tactical for, like, we talk about the big things and we talked about that, but one of the biggest reasons people think they're bad leads is marketing and sales people think differently, and what their job is in the role of the purchase cycle, right, of the buying cycle is different. So one of the biggest gaps is almost to a T. Almost never see someone educate what the marketing intelligence is, the lead intelligence that has been gathered on a prospect through marketing activity, what that story is to someone from sales. Once they know that story, most salespeople know what to do with it, right? But the problem comes in is they get a list and they don't know what to do with that information. It's breadcrumbs. Marketers see it. We understand it. We're like, we're out in the forest and see Hansel and Gretel's breadcrumb path, right? Like, we got it. We understand it. That's the world we live in. It's not the world sales lives in. So you have to take the time to go through like a prospect's activity and say to sales why you think this is a good lead. And then you have to let sales say why they think it isn't if they don't. Most of the time, though, I will tell you, I don't hear back, oh, no, that's not a good lead. Most of the time, I'm like, I didn't know that. I didn't know that. Really? So, like, if you say, well, they visited these 5 pages, they've gone back to this page several times, this tells me they're interested in this. This is what I would provide to them. You have to teach them how to look at that information that comes in your CRM or whatever else you have that's tracking it so that they know what to do with it, because it's in marketing language. Not that they're dumb, but it's in marketing language. It's in marketing breadcrumbs, right? Because it's the marketing part of the journey. So you have to do that training and make sure that people understand it. Most sales reps that are top sellers inside of a company, the minute I share that with them, they're off to the races. And if they have any questions whatsoever about something, they'll send me a note. This is, tell me what this one says. This looks kind of interesting. Tell me what this says, right? But nobody had ever told them that before. So that's a big piece of it. These gaps like this are bigger than the miscommunication. They're bigger than the ego, than, is this more important than this? And the second point I'll make is, I won't speak to all the sales ones because I don't always set those or have control over changing them. But most KPIs inside marketing departments are trash because they weren't set by marketers who have control over what they're doing. Like, traffic is a totally different game this year than it was last year, than it was the previous 10 years. If you are still basing traffic as your top thing, you're missing any kind of, it's not the leading indicator that it used to be to get someone into sales, because we're in a 0-click environment where people are going directly to sales and not clicking through to the website in the same way. And if you're only focused on that, you're missing all the opportunities that are happening off site, right? So there are just a lot of trash KPIs out there for marketing, and that sets up this misalignment with sales too, because at one time, they were good leading indicators, but they all relied on less than perfect attribution data. And now that less than perfect cracks our fault lines, right? And it doesn't match up anymore. And it's one of the things leading to huge frustrations. Like, I see all the time people still using email open rates as a marketing KPI. And I'm like, that hasn't been a usable metric for years, right? Like, it no longer gives you anything that you can use. Used to be, you couldn't get somebody to go to your site unless they clicked, right? So you'd use click-throughs, and then you couldn't get somebody to click if they hadn't opened. So these were just leading indicators to get to something. Now, the bigger the marketing department you have, the more you're trying to drill these things down, because you have somebody in charge of emails or in charge of search, and you're trying to set KPIs for them. But that's where you keep getting people optimizing for this KPI that doesn't relate to the business goal because the environment has changed. So I had to talk about that one because the KPI mismatch is huge.
So let me just say that a lot of the KPIs around sales are crap too.
Well, I was going to let you say that, not me.
I just want to say one place that you can align sales and marketing really nicely is around this account-based approach. So if a lead comes in, often the salesperson is going to be frustrated because the person who comes and does the research and reads the articles is a low-level buyer who's been sent out to do research. If you want to align sales and marketing, immediately start a campaign to reach out to the rest of that group, so that you have now you're helping that sales rep get contacts. Marketing's helping that sales rep get contacts throughout the organization that they're later going to be able to work with. Chris, do you have one more thought before we wrap this up? Or Bryn, you do? Go ahead, Chris.
You can go first. It's fine.
All right, quickly.
Wait,
Talk about sales. Quickly, we're talking about sales and marketing alignment. That's internal. Externally, we want to make sure that, and you brought this up, which is what triggered this. I want my IT person to talk to their IT person. I want my CFO to talk to their CFO. Maybe I want my marketing, it depends on what you sell, my marketing person to talk to their marketing. You said something that just resonated with me so deeply, which was, your rep can't speak all their languages. But if you can, I mean, this is like a Barbara Weaver Smith mindset, right? Where if everyone in the organization is part of that sale, and you are matching the right conversation, the right people to the right conversations, and you're all working toward one goal, which is solving a problem. If you can get all that alignment, not just the sales and marketing alignment, but alignment with all the departments that, match to all of the departments in your buyer's environment, I think you'll have a big win.
Okay, Chris.
So I was going to bring up something that's a little bit funkier, but like I was at a company for 8 years, and the first quarter that I was in a pure hunting role, we got this email from marketing, and it had, here's all of the content that we're creating over the next quarter, some of the things that we have going on later in the year, but it was almost like a map of, hey, here's all the stuff that we're doing within this vertical, right? And then didn't get another one of those emails for 2.5 years, right? And it was listed as a quarterly update, but for some reason it didn't go out every quarter. And I'm like, if you really want to keep, and it was not necessarily going to be 100% sales focused, but what it allowed me to do is say, hey, if we're creating this white paper, I could start to already identify the accounts that I think this is important, and I could start to pick that topic and trickle that in before that white paper comes, because that's going to be a big hitter, because it's going to be probably 6 pages, right? And if I'm going to get somebody to read 6 pages, they better think that the content that I'm going to be delivering is worth that amount of time, right? So, but not getting that thing for, like I said, another 2.5 years was really, really disappointing, because I found it really helpful. It allowed me to do a lot of planning on my end and map those things out, which took a lot of the heavy lifting really off of my plate, and a lot of the sort of almost emergency, I need to, now this content's come out that I was unaware of, but I haven't built any sort of momentum of that going through. So, it probably comes off as very clunky, and, is that how you want to be perceived? I would say most of the time, no. It's okay to be a little clunky here and there. We're all human, but you don't want to come off it that way all the time. So
Thanks, Chris. Any last thoughts before we wrap up?
Chris said something when he was talking about that calendar that made me realize one thing too, that sometimes leads to mismatch. I see this mostly in companies that have a CRO that oversees marketing, sales, and customer success, is to remember that marketing works on vastly different timelines than sales does. Like if you're going to roll out something and you need a campaign and you need a whatever, you got to get that to marketing much earlier than you would to sales. Like they need to be out in front. The production of things takes much longer. And
if you tell it to sales, they're going to start selling it.
Right.
even if it's not ready.
and when your sellers are blowing and going, like I worked in media for years, and fourth quarter was the biggest quarter. When like sales reps did not want me to roll out some new playbook for them in fourth quarter. They were so busy in fourth quarter, like just with business, existing business. They weren't looking to develop things or whatever. I had to have those ready for a different time. So meeting those vastly different timelines and matching those up, like the puzzle pieces that they are, is a big fix on that alignment problem.
All right. Thank you for talking us through how to align our sales and marketing teams to start off 2026 strong. Thanks for joining us for this episode of the Sales SOS podcast, and we'll see you in the next episode. Happy selling, everybody.